Avoid Chamas 2025. Just avoid them. Okay, in case you're watching me from a different country and you're wondering, what are Chamas? Chamas is basically this format where people come together like you, me, and someone else in a quite a crooked way, like, and you'll be like, hey, each and every week we'll be contributing 2,000, 1,000. Then each and every week, let's say we are 5 of us, okay? And then each of us should be contributing 1,000 shilling, let's say for a week or in a week. And then we meet. Then after we contribute each one 5,000, then we give it to somebody. Then next week we give it to somebody. Then next week we give it to somebody. Then next week. That is what we call chama, or you can call it in another term, table banking. That is what I'm telling you to avoid. I know this video I'm likely to be roasted on the comment section because people are not ready to make a change or are not ready to do what? People are not ready to go ahead and change the things that they have been doing for years. And I know you have excuses, but hear me out. Let me explain why I'm telling you to avoid Chamas. Chamas, for sure, they used to solve some problems back then. But nowadays, or right now, things have changed and we're becoming more informed. There is no way we can take a tool that was meant or that was solving a problem in 1960s, 70s, or 40s, and you bring it to 2025 and expect a miracle. By the way, do you know what they say? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result is actually being arrogant. That's for sure. Now, this is Good Joseph. In case you're watching me for the first time, I talk about money, investment, and anything related to that. And today's video is none other about avoiding Chamas in 2025. And I'm going to offer you an alternative to that of what you're supposed to do so that you can elevate you and your guys to the next level. Hit that like button. Even if you don't like the video, still like the video and leave a comment on the comment section. Let's get on the business now, okay? We are talking about to avoid Chamas, okay? Now, what you're supposed to understand is that, sure, people may say like, hey, you know what? Chamas are more of socializing. It's not more, it's not, you know, this is argument I usually get. Oh, Joseph, you know, Chamas are more of socializing more than it is finances. Okay, that's a whole of a different outlook of it. But don't try to solve a financial problem using a social setup because it will never solve that. You know, it's like taking a Honda spare to fix it in a Toyota. Sure, it might work for a short period of time, then things goes south. Well, that kind of weird example, but anyway, you get what I'm trying to say, isn't it? Now, what you're supposed to understand is that chamas don't solve the problem, or chamas are never made for long term. Number one, let's say these are 5 guys who come together and each contribute, say, $10 each and every week. Therefore, we have $50, okay? So if you have $50 each and every week, then this $50 is given to first person. Then the next week we give it to the second person, the third, the fourth, and then lastly we give the fifth, and then you go back again. We keep on doing that cycle. Listen, this thing is not an investment. This is a social setup, and a social setup cannot solve a financial problem or a financial challenge. So what will be the alternative of this? First of all, don't break up your chamas. You guys remain the way you are. You guys, you are together because you have a vision. And by the way, you guys, things are resonating well because you people are binded by one factor, whatever you guys know what it is. So what you're supposed to do, this $10 or whichever the money you call it, you can call it a beer, you can call it a shilling, kwacha, pula, whatever. See, once you contribute this money, what you're supposed to do is to make sure that you guys invest this money. You invest it. Invest this money. And how do you go about that? I always tell people, sure, you have alternatives of investing in more complicated areas, but just start with as little or as small as MMF or a money market fund, whereby you guys open an account and be pumping in that money there. That money will be giving birth to other money. Now, guess what are the importance of that? First of all, you use that one as an accumulation basket so that in future you can decide to take another investment. Probably you guys, you might contemplate about buying a property, maybe probably you're looking forward into everyone, in this particular group owning a parcel of land to ultimately build your own home or building your rentals or whichever the thing it is. Now, this MMF can actually be used an accumulation basket. Two, this money accumulated there in that money market fund can be used to go and invest in other areas like buying buying stocks, ETFs, and whatever, building or other bonds, bills, and what have you, whatever you guys can agree as a group. Number two, this one can in one way be used as a long term, can be used for long term. Okay, for long term. What I always tell people, instead of getting this money each and every week, you can actually let it be. Once you let it be, you use it. By the way, I always tell people, if you saving 1,000 each and every week for long term might actually stress your business if you're running a business, or might actually stress your finances. You'd rather make it half of this, which is $5, but look at it from the lenses of long term. That is what you're supposed to do. You might actually, what they say, you alone you can walk faster, but when you are many of you, or the two of you, you can actually go further. And that is advantage that you're gonna take, because other people gonna use you, or you're gonna use other people as your police, making sure that you do not go ahead and misbehave as far as your cash is concerned. And number three, which is the major thing that I'm gonna talking about, is about inflation. And what is it? About inflation, basically, when you guys contribute this money and it rests idle somewhere, and then you're waiting each and every month, say, to share, or after 1 week, or whichever the arrangement that you guys have, you're not factoring the issues of inflation. And nowadays, we are not even talking about the inflation. We are going even further. We are not even chasing the inflation at getting something that is giving us slightly above the inflation. No, we are going further than the inflation. We are looking forward our cash to making us money, larger percentages and what have you. Of course, with consideration of the risks involved. So what you're supposed to understand, when you invest this money, instead of just having it idle, then you're cushioning your money from the inflation. And the topic of inflation is the topic that most people don't understand it. By virtue of you just letting your money be, or lying idle in a bank, just the way it is, that is actually a subject to deduction. Well, it's a deduction that you may not be able to see it, but the fact is that money is actually losing the power to purchase. Are we together? It's like the way you buy a car and you don't say, start it maybe, just let it stay there for like a month or two. Actually, it's gonna run into problems. I know that's a weird example, but the point is, if you just let the money be idle lying in a bank, that is actually being eaten away by this bug called inflation. So why do I always avoid these Chamas, or why do I tell people to avoid it? I'm not saying people to avoid the organization that they have with fellow people. I'm telling them to avoid the structure that they are having, that they are purporting to be a savings. And I know what you may argue, say, hey, you know what, Joseph, when we save, I've managed to buy this, I've managed to buy that. You could have done something better, wouldn't you? I mean, wouldn't you love something better than what you did with that Chama? Absolutely you would, I believe. And if you don't, then wow, I don't know even what I can tell you. So the reason why I tell people to avoid the structure that they have in terms of saving in a Chama, it is for them to make sure at least they are no longer now viewing this Chama as a short-term goal to solve their problem, but rather a long-term goal or a long-term tool that they can use to make sure that at least they save something, they invest something, so that they can be able to look at it from the lenses of the future. For example, I always tell people, you might have your 10K, I might have my 10K, someone else might have a 10K, but the 10K as an individual may not do wonders. But when we sum up this money, we might have ourselves like 100K. If you are 10 of us, then we can take that 100K. We can even go open, it doesn't have to be a money market fund. We can even open a circle. We can be saving our money there. We can even saving our money in a bank. And then we actually work on our credit. In future, that is the first month we've done ourselves 100K. In 10 times we have 1,000,000. We can borrow 2 or 3 times on that. And then we can go buy a property. We can value add. We can build some structures. We can now be getting rental income as we look forward on how to pay back the loan. Again, we build again. That's how we grow ourselves. That's how we move from one level to the other. Well, I'm speaking as a chair of two groups that are not Chamas, that have gone an extra mile to do some things in terms of savings, to do some things in terms of investments. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Rather than being an individual or individuals who have come together, you contribute, you give someone, and you know what happens? Once you guys come together, you contribute whatever the amount of money you contribute, whether it is monthly, weekly, or whichever the period of time, then you meet, then that money that you've contributed in that that simple sitting, then you start distributing that cash out. Guess what? You still walk home with the problem that you had. If you're a poor financial manager, you're gonna still walk home with accumulated cash. You've actually, sort of denied yourself in a certain period of time to get a huge chunk of cash to still use or go home with the same behavior, character, and you're gonna still affect that money. And you know what? You still need that chama because you rarely can save by yourself because you have a problem. But if you had people surrounding you who are stronger financially, and of course who I mean, again, I said you can use them as your police to make sure that they tow you. I mean, they keep you on toes so that at least you can ultimately achieve something great for your life. And that is exactly what I tell people. For example, as I finish up this video, nowadays banks in Kenya specifically, I don't know how is it in your country. In Kenya, banks are not giving loans that easily. They are preferring lending the government cash comparing to lending the private sector. Of course, for an obvious reason. And I don't blame them. I mean, they're in business. And of course, if I was also in business, I would do exactly like that. I mean, it's far much safer lending the government compared to lending a common citizen. Okay? Now, despite the common citizen might give me more money, but I would rather get a 13% that I'm sure than 18% that I'm gambling. So what happens right now is it's very hard for people to get loans, especially if you do not have some, like, what do you call them, the securities, the collaterals or something like that. So when you come together, you guys, you can actually create yourself a very good group, a very good kind of a clan whereby you can be, what do you call, I saw a certain organization with a certain group or a certain chama whereby they're actually using themselves as the what do you call them? The guarantors or something like that. Yeah, I can borrow, you grant me. Next time this one borrows, grants me. This one does this one. Now, and then the moment you borrow, the rest of the people actually look at what you're doing with your money, because for God's sake, we've guaranteed you. And if you mess up in paying back the money that you said you're going to pay back, then we are the one who's going to pay that cash. So we have to ensure whatever you are doing can actually, go ahead and manage to pay back that loan. You see what's happening now? You have people who are actually keeping you on toes. And that is why I'm telling you, just avoid the chamas, just the way they are, just a chama or something like that. Have something that will help you to not only get the today's solution, but also or ultimately be able to achieve what we call a long-term goal. Remember one thing, as I finish this again, there are two things that people confuse. One, there's something called the emotional security. That is an emotional security. And then we have something called financial security. Okay? These are two different things. They all mean security, and people tend to confuse emotional security with financial security. Let's say someone is not well off in terms of the finances, but for God's sake, they can manage to, go ahead and get all the savings that they have and build a home. Okay, let me use a very practical example. Let's say you have 5 million with you. 5 million. That's like 50,000 USD. Okay, or thereabout. Now, if you have that money, honestly speaking, you can build something here in Kenya. You can buy a land, say, worth $1 million, okay, and then build a home worth 4 million. I mean, that's a decent home, honestly. That's a very good 3-bedroom, okay, ensuite or close to ensuite or ensuite. You have a home, isn't it? But you don't have anything in your coffers, all right? You don't have any financial muscle. It is gone. It's actually been absorbed in a home. Sure, you got out of your paying rent and what have you. Now, in that manner, most people will say, like, you know what, oh my, I'm financially secured. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're emotionally secured. There are things that are meant for emotional security. And for example, let me ask a question. Okay? Let's say you have person A, and by the way, I'm going to make a whole video about this. And then you have person B. This person A has 1,500,000, 1.5 million in an MMF. And this guy has 1.5 million in a parcel of land. Both of them have equal amount of money. This one has his in MMF and this one has his in the land. So tell me, between these people, which one would you prefer having? Okay, if you're a follower of Good Joseph, probably you might say this. But the fact is, most people be like, hey, better 1.5 million in a land. You know why? Because it's a physical asset that I can actually even brag on. I can tell people, hey, that parcel of land is mine. Hey, this comes with an emotional security. Emotional security. And there is nothing wrong fulfilling that, but fulfilling that at the wrong time, that's where the problem is. So it is good to differentiate between a financial security and an emotional security so that at least you make the appropriate thing. So you might find people who are in Chamas are emotionally secured, but then you find those people who have investments, they're financially secured. But the point is, find a way of how you can have both of them ultimately as time goes by. This is with Joseph at all the time. Make sure that you hit like a button. And if you need my services, that's my number. See you there.